My name's John DeCicco. I'm a research professor here at the University of Michigan's Energy Institute. It's my pleasure to co-chair the event this year with Ellen Hughes Cromwick, who you'll be seeing and hearing from as the day goes on. And it's been actually my honor to have been one of the triumvirate who helped develop this event 5 years ago. I think one of the others of those is here. He's going to be on a panel, Tom Lyon, and then Ryan Kellogg left us for the University of Chicago. But anyway, we're carrying on the great concept that really Ryan had of bringing together a diverse set of people, including academic economists, along with policy analysts and other industry and transportation analysts from across all the players in the sector, from industry, from government, from nonprofits, from consultancies, and so on. What I'd like to do first is introduce the Energy Institute's new director, Anna Stefanopoulou, who will provide some welcoming remarks. Anna took the helm here. A few more words of intro. No, you can stand next to me. Anna took the helm here on September 1. She's a professor of mechanical engineering and holds the William Clay Ford Professorship in Manufacturing here at U of M. She joined the faculty in 2000 after stints at UC Santa Barbara and Ford Motor Company. Her research specialties include control of combustion engines as well as electrochemical processes such as batteries and fuel cells. Just before assuming the reins here at the Energy Institute, she spent 10 years as the director of the Army Center of Excellence known as the Automotive Research Center. That was a multi-institution center led here at the University of Michigan. I got to know Anna, shortly after I arrived here about 9 years ago, and I can really attest to her creativity, to how energetic she is. You'll find her very engaging and thoughtful, and I hope a lot of you get to meet her and chat with her as the event goes on. So let's please give Anna a very warm TE3 welcome.
So thank you very much. I'm delighted to, on behalf of the University of Michigan and the University of Michigan Energy Institute, to welcome you in this conference in transportation, economy, and energy and environment. So as John said and introduced me, I was totally unexpected. Actually, I thought I would just I will be telling you to sit down and get your seats. So I'm enjoying this position to have been introduced. So as I was saying, I've been delighted to have taken the directorship of the Institute and being on the helm, and it has been a really busy 7 weeks. This last 7 weeks, if everything goes well in this event, it's all because of me. If you have any complaints, don't blame me. So with that, I'll have to say that I'm sure things are going to go really well because we are here, and we're here because we all share our interest and the understanding that transportation is very important for energy and the environment, as well the critical role of economic analysis for spurring innovation and really sustaining this, painful process of technology transfer and actually making a change in the transportation and energy spectrum. At the Energy Institute is very honored to host this forum, the TE3 so-called, for addressing these issues, and it has been entrusted, the Energy Institute has been entrusted from the university this mission to bridge the gaps between technology, economy, the sciences, and even humanities, and actually bring together interdisciplinary kind of activities, large activities in the transportation spectrum, but also across energy. Well, So as I get to know all of you, and I'm looking forward to discuss with you and actually make strong partnerships and try to understand the needs and the opportunities, you will see that I'm a very passionate person about technology. I grew up in laboratories, kind of. I was brought up, and I'm an engineer myself. And when we talk, please don't hesitate to say stop, stop, when I just go on and on and on about stuff that that we do at the laboratories. So indeed, I'm very proud to be at the university where 3 engineering departments, the mechanical engineering leads a lot of transportation research. The naval architecture and marine engineering are they're ruling the space when it comes to sea transportation. And the aerospace department, these are the top engineering schools in the nation and pretty high up in the world. So we do make transportation go, right? So we need to actually make sure that we make it go green. And maybe being here, maybe I should say go blue or something. I don't know. Okay, so but seriously, as more and more population shifts to mega cities, and as more and more people are going from not having a vehicle to actually now seeking the mobility and the larger accessibility, and not to mention the thrill of traveling and exploring and just transportation is at the foundation of actually a lot of our innovation and the way we feel and the way we react here in the American culture. So as this is happening, we really ought to come up with clean transportation future, and discussing this here is very important. Back to myself a little bit, just to give you an idea, I'm privileged myself to run experiments. And I guess here at the University of Michigan, where we run experiments next to students and industry in the M-City, where a lot of the connectivity and automation innovation is happening. And then having spent my time in the engineering world has been illuminating for me the last 7 weeks to actually get to see how do you address transportation difficulties and challenges from the economy and the policy perspective. So I am learning a lot, especially from the business leaders and the economics leaders here. And this, I have to note here, this past week, I guess this 2 weeks ago, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change reported the urgency and clarified the urgency of the Energy Institute and across the world, but the Energy Institute faculty affiliates to develop the innovation and pursue the innovation to help actually mitigate the climate change. The university announcement also, there was a university announcement in this past summer where the Energy Institute Beyond Carbon Neutral project would merge with the San Francisco-based global CO2 initiative. And that is a good example of how the university incubates ideas and activities in a small scale, and then they can grow and be bold in their reach. You may also have heard President Schlissel's, president of the University of Michigan, Schlissel announcement that the University of Michigan has committed to the pursuit of carbon neutrality. With many of you in the campus helping, energizing the community and talking to our leadership, it happened. And congratulations due to everyone that helped make this possible, all the way from students to professors to actually industry advisors and community activists that joined us in making the case. I am definitely grateful and honored to be part of this community. And I'm very honored to be here opening this transportation, energy, economics, environment. Anyway, in some sequence. I keep on forgetting what's the sequence of the E's, as long as I say 3 of them. And we will have an event that has panel sessions and paper reviews. I noticed, John and Helen actually organized a lot of things together with the steering committee, and I want to thank them very much for their passion and their thoughtfulness in putting this together. And I also want to thank foremost our sponsors, the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, for actually making it possible for students from other institutions to come here to attend this, learn, communicate, and frankly add ideas to us, the Global Automakers and the Auto Alliance, and Ford and GM, and also the Oak Ridge National Laboratories, and of course Michigan Energy for Energy. This is a Michigan Energy Office of the state of Michigan. And I have to say, very, very happy to see very strong collaboration with and sponsorship from the Environmental Protection Agency, and also internally from MCT and the Energy Institute. So thanks again to the steering committee. I can see a lot of you, and to the staff that pulled all this together, and the speakers that will give us their views, and to all of you for an exciting discussion. And I will be here to learn a lot. So with that, I want to bring John back for the real thing. Thanks.
Well, it's great to see how many people we have here. We've broken new records at TE3 in terms of registrations. Over 200 folks registered. I know some will be coming in. I know there's many who are faculty elsewhere, work for them to be able to come in on Friday, so we'll be having more arrivals in time for the events tomorrow. TE3 has evolved to now a day-and-a-half event rather than a single-day event. And a lot of that is due to the feedback that we've gotten from folks who have attended. When we started, we were a more traditional academic format dominated by peer-reviewed papers. We haven't abandoned those, and in fact, we expanded so we could keep a good slate of strong economic and similar analytic work that's been through the peer review process, and we're very grateful for those of you here and others who aren't here who were peer reviewers for that process. But what we've done is now expanded the number of panel discussions. And that's really crucial when it comes to the conference theme this year, which is taking a look at the very exciting world of new mobility, emerging technologies related to car sharing, to connectivity, to increasing levels of automation and increasing levels of electrification. To really address these issues, we need to include people who are thought leaders in the field, people involved in the actual innovations and startups themselves, as well as those observing what's going on, and those analyzing it in terms of what it means for the future of transportation. We're going to be hearing from folks like all of that today. To introduce our first session on global transportation trends, I'm going to just show a few big picture slides. This from the Global Carbon Project has two panels. The left panel shows energy use from the major sources over the 16-year period from 2000 to 2016. And then the right panel shows CO2 emissions which come from the fossil sources. Obviously, nuclear, solar, and wind don't emit CO2. And then another significant source of CO2 in industry is cement making, and then there's some, of course, from flaring during natural gas and oil production operations. What we see on the left is that transportation, or oil, oil is the world's largest source of energy. Not all of it is in transportation, but transportation is the largest driver of petroleum demand, and of course that's what this conference focuses on. Petroleum is number 2 to coal in terms of its contribution to anthropogenic CO2 emissions. I'm not going to go into the little percent numbers on the top there. Those are just kind of what's happened over the past 5 years on a percent annual basis. And what we do see is that the rapid growth in coal that had been transpiring really for some time recently seems to have halted, at least temporarily. But what we do see is steady growth in most other sources of energy, and therefore steady growth in CO2 emissions from the other two sources of fossil energy, petroleum and natural gas. This slide thinks about the options, big picture look at the options for mitigating transportation CO2 emissions from liquid fuels, which of course by far still dominate energy for the sector. Things broadly fall into two categories, and it's because there's some distinct differences between transportation and, say, the stationary energy-using sectors. For one thing, it's not practical to do carbon capture and storage on tailpipes or jet exhausts. That set of mitigation options, which is important for power generation in industry, is not really relevant for transportation. So what that leaves is really two things. You can reduce the demand for liquid fuels, and that's going to be most of the focus of this event. But the other thing is to offset those emissions by speeding up how quickly carbon dioxide is removed from the atmosphere elsewhere, either in the biosphere or other means there in the lower right-hand corner might be things that are still speculative, like direct air capture. But on the left, the topics that we're going to be covered today are all going to relate to these three ways of reducing liquid fuel demand: reducing travel demand, and that might come from the new mobility technologies, car sharing and things like that. We'll hear perspectives on that topic. Improving fuel efficiency, of course, and then substituting non-carbon fuels, i.e. electricity, energy carriers that don't bring carbon to the vehicle, so that's electricity and maybe someday hydrogen. Looking ahead, and we're going to see other scenarios from some other speakers, but this comes from the latest edition of the International Energy Agency's World Energy Outlook. The left panel gives the growth expected through 2040 and where it's going to happen in the electric car fleet. There's lots of different scenarios. Again, we'll see others about how quickly the world's car park will electrify, and where that's going to happen. And of course, China seems to be really leading the pack in that score. If the assumptions in this scenario, which IEA calls its new policies scenario, play out, that includes stronger efficiency standards and other incentives to maintain ongoing increases in vehicle efficiency. Passenger car contribution to petroleum demand could actually be negative by 2040, i.e. a net absolute savings globally, if the kinds of assumptions in this policy scenario are borne out, which means that petroleum demand will become the growth in petroleum demand will be wholly dominated by the shipping sectors, both trucking and waterborne, as well as aviation, air travel for both goods and people, as well as petrochemicals. We also well know that we're not really on track to achieving the IEA type scenarios, let alone the kinds of scenarios that are called for under something like the Paris agreements. This is a really interesting slide from IEA's recent energy efficiency report, and it shows for 6 major markets, the US, China, India, Japan, Germany, and the United Kingdom, the last 4 years of market shares of SUVs, and it's been going up everywhere. The red curves on the top are the relative changes in fuel prices experienced in each country over that same period. And of course, after oil prices fell in the latter half of 2014, that helped certainly shift consumer interest back to what consumers tend to like. So the bottom line is that even though electric vehicles, in terms of their growth, are very rapid on a percentage basis, Conventional vehicles are getting larger and being added to the car park, i.e. the total number of global vehicles in the world, in far greater numbers on an absolute basis. My final opening slide is this one from a colleague, Andreas Schaffer, who is now at University College London. He painstakingly compiled data on estimates for passenger travel in kilometers per year per person and compared it to income, also shown on a per capita basis, GDP per capita. And this is a log-log scale. And what's striking is within a relatively narrow band in the grand scheme of things, we see this very strong correlation between transportation activity, how much people travel around, not just driving, but this includes air travel, high-speed rail, and other things, and income. So that's partly what we're up against. And of course, a big question, again, that we'll be tackling here is whether some of these new technology changes might disrupt these traditional relationships in any way.